By the end of today's episode, you'll know exactly how to restart your acting career while juggling real-life responsibilities like mortgage, retirement planning, and a full-time job. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and today I'm going to be covering how to start acting again without quitting your current job, the best ways to balance acting with real-life obligations, and how to set yourself up for success before retirement. All right, so the first step is to define what success in acting really means to you. Okay, so acting doesn't have to be like an all or nothing thing where you're just like going all in on it and you're focusing on nothing else. You want to figure out what your version of success looks like. Like, for instance, do you want to work as an actor full time? Or do you just want to do some fun side jobs occasionally, right? Like, what kind of acting work do you actually want to be involved in? Okay. And also think about the types of productions that you want to be in. So do you want to be in indie productions? Do you want to get an agent so that you can act on actual legit film and TV productions like network television? Figure out what that means to you first, rather than just kind of having this arbitrary thing like, I want to go into acting, right? Because if you're not clear on it, you're never going to be able to figure out which specific steps you have to take. Okay, so once you're clear about it, then you want to get clear on what those actual steps are. Okay, and so you want to sit down and do a little bit of research. Just think about and look things up online. Think about, if my goal is to, let's say, get into network television, and the most frequent way to do that is by getting an agent, well, what do I need to do to get an agent, right? And so you want to write all of those steps down. Just kind of get an idea, have a big list of all the things that you can do, and then think about taking that list and kind of putting it into an order that makes the most logical sense, right? So if one of those steps is, I need to get an agent, but then another step is I need to get new headshots. Well, you probably need to get new headshots before you can expect to get an agent, right? So most of the time, maybe your list isn't going to make perfect sense, or be like, might not be 100% clear which thing needs to go first, but you can still kind of get a general idea, which is good. And then what you want to do is start actually taking action on that, right? So you want to take some easy steps now without quitting your job. So some of the general steps that I recommend taking is things like online or in-person acting classes, right? And you can schedule those around your day job. Then you can also submit yourself and start getting involved in some small local theater productions or student films or low-paid indie productions. All of that stuff is good ways to start to get some experience. And let's say, again, if you've been off from acting a while, you'll start to get refreshed with what the industry is like now and what's been going on. And then you can start building your resume by doing these projects, which many of these smaller productions do shoot during off times. And the reason is obviously that, let's say it's a student project. Well, the student goes to school most weekdays when everybody else is at work. Or if it's independent production, the indie filmmaker might not be making all of their money off of production, so they have a regular day job. And so usually those kinds of productions are shot on weekends or times when people are off. And so you can more easily schedule it around your work if you work during weekends as well. Whereas those bigger legit productions like SAG-AFTRA level network television stuff is going to shoot most weekdays, in which case those can definitely be harder, obviously, to work in if you have to schedule around your job. Okay, so doing those independent productions are easy ways to gain experience. And not only that, but you're going to start building your resume. You're going to get some additional credits on there. And ideally, you want to follow up with the directors and try to get footage for your demo reel. And those things are super important. If they're on point, it's going to be way easier for you to get an agent down the line, right? So basically, you're doing that around your work job so that when you're ready to retire or end working and focus on acting full time, you've already built up this credit list and this footage, and you've created a demo reel. And so all of the other steps become way easier. You sort of like shortcutted, or at least position yourself to have a better chance of success when you're ready to go into acting full time. Other things that you can do is making casting profiles, right? So you should definitely have an Actors Access and a Backstage and a Casting Networks profile. Actors Access is generally going to be good for slightly larger productions, even though it's kind of hard to get acting work off of there. Sometimes Backstage, it has more indie projects and it can be a little bit easier to get bookings off of there. Same with Casting Networks, it has more independent projects, but having all three pages or profiles is going to make it easier generally to find auditions to submit to. And then when you start to go out to look for an agent, they oftentimes want to see at least an Actors Access profile, but sometimes also a Casting Networks, and some agents are interested in seeing your Backstage, right? So having these profiles is something that you can totally do while you're still working full time, and at least have them set up. And you can also use them to start finding those acting jobs. Now, remember that your routine needs to be consistent, okay? This is pretty important. So you want to figure out all of the things that you're going to need to do on both a consistent basis and the one-time things, right? So like for instance, when actors work with me for coaching, what we'll often do is kind of front load the one-off type of things in the first couple of months of working together. So if they need new headshots, or if they have to update their profiles, write out a bio, create their resume, all of that stuff is oftentimes like a one-time thing. Yeah, sure, you need headshots every few years, but it's not like consistent type of things like submitting yourself to projects all the time, right? So you kind of front load all of these one-time things as long as you know that you're going to be, let's say, retiring, or you're going to be ready to go into acting more in the next like year or two. Do all of this stuff front loaded, and then get clear on which things are going to actually need to be done on a consistent basis. And you're going to ask yourself, what days or times in the week can you actually be the most consistent with the things that need to be done over and over and over again, right? So let's say like taking classes, or again, like I said before, submitting yourself for auditions, okay? These things that are kind of repetitive, they need to stay consistent, because if you just do them sporadically, if you're not clear on when you can do them and you don't kind of put the forethought into it, then you're going to be like crazy, let's say in the first month, submitting yourself over and over again, and then it's not going to be sustainable and you're going to stop. And as soon as you stop submitting yourself consistently to auditions, you're going to start auditioning way less and booking a lot less, and then your numbers are going to go down. You want to keep your numbers sort of high so that when you're ready to start looking for an agent, it becomes a lot easier, right? If you can point to numbers and say, hey, in the past 3 months, I booked 6 projects and I auditioned 20 times or 30 times or something over the past 2 or 3 months, let's say, it's going to look a lot better than an actor who's looking for an agent. And then when the agent's like, oh, well, how many auditions and callbacks and bookings have you got? And you're like, oh, I haven't really done anything, right? Like that. So you want to put that time in and figure out, if I want to be consistent with this every single week, submitting and making sure that I'm taking training, when can I do it? And then schedule it into your calendar so that you don't let it fall to the side, you know? And of course, if you find that acting in certain types of projects or doing certain stuff isn't doable with your schedule, then obviously consider either changing the kinds of projects that you're submitting to, or see if there's any way to modify your schedule a little bit to make it work, okay? And the good thing is generally speaking, that's another example of the front-loaded work, right? All this planning and thinking it out. It might take you a little bit of time. You might have to sit down for an hour or two to actually like look at your schedule and figure it out, but it only needs to be done once, unless you like get a new job with a completely different schedule, right? once you've figured it out, then you can just kind of let it run long term and get the benefits. As long as you have your reminders set and you're actually following through, it's going to be consistent. And that consistency is what leads to long-term results. Okay, let's talk a little bit about finances now. So I do not recommend that you quit your job. Okay, you want to think of acting, even though some actors might disagree with this, I recommend that you sort of think of acting as like a hobby at first, right? So you want to figure out like, what is my budget for this hobby? What are the things that I'm going to need to pay for? And are they recurring or one time, right? So headshots, classes, subscriptions to casting websites, maybe shooting footage for a demo reel, okay? You want to figure all of this stuff out, and you want to make sure that the numbers are going to make sense, okay? In addition to that, you also want to think about like your location, okay? So do you have to travel somewhere to get acting work? Is there no, like you can look it up and find like on casting websites, are there no real acting jobs? So if I am going to consistently need to, let's say, go to New York, and that's a long drive, what's the cost of gas going to be, right? Or do I need to fly somewhere? Do I have to account for that? Think of all of the transportation costs that are also going to be involved in this. And you have to make sure that the numbers make sense. You're probably not going to earn all that much from acting for the first 6 to 12 months as you start to build your credits and reel. So you just want to take that into account and be realistic. Once you've kind of thought about all of this stuff, the whole thing, it really comes down to setting yourself up to act full-time once you're ready, okay? So whether it's when you retire or you have like a specific date that you're setting in mind of like, all right, this is when I'm going to go all in on acting, just be clear about when you want to start focusing on acting primarily, so that, again, if that's your long-term goal, so that you can kind of sort of like divide the finances up and divide all of the tasks up along that timeline so that it all makes sense, right? And you look and you're like, all right, if my goal is to go into acting full-time 1 year from now, well, these are all the things that I'm going to need to do, and these are all the things that I'm going to need to spend money on. In month 1, I'm thinking I'll do this. Month 2, this, just kind of like breaking it down like that, and then asking yourself, is that realistic? Okay. Again, until you get to that point, I generally recommend that you spend your time focusing on building up your online presence. So like your casting profiles and all of that. You start networking. So reaching out to past people that you used to be in touch with, let's say, that are in the industry, or even people that you know from classes. Just kind of like think like, who do I know? Can I reach out to them and, just sort of break the ice or re-break the ice and reconnect with these people? And then obviously you should also be focusing on building up your credits and reel during this time. This way, everything is done and set up so that when you're ready to jump into it more fully, you've kind of hit that goal and the transition is going to be really smooth, and you'll be pretty much like all the stuff is done and you can start booking a lot of work right away. Remember, you don't have to wait for retirement to start getting into acting if you currently have a full-time job, okay? The whole point of this is that I recommend that you start taking all this action and organizing stuff and starting to spend a little bit of money now so that everything is lined up perfectly, and that when you eventually are ready, it's going to be way easier to dive in. All right, thanks for listening. Now, before I wrap, I actually just want to read a recent review that I got for the podcast. Martin Benson tells it like it is, straightforward and generous with insider info on the industry. Thanks so much for that review, Carpel. Now, if you've been enjoying the show, I'd love to offer you something special. This applies both to new reviews and to people who have already written a review, okay? For a limited time, I'm actually offering actors a completely free access to my Kickstart Your Acting Career mini course, which normally sells for $77. All you have to do is post an honest, detailed review for the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Again, if you've already posted a review, just shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll happily give you access to the course. And then after you've done so, after you've posted the review, email me so that I know who you are, because sometimes the usernames and stuff don't tell me, and I can't reach out to people. I don't know how to get in touch with you. Okay, so just shoot me an email with the review that you wrote, and I'll check it out. Maybe I'll even read it aloud in a future episode, which is something I'm trying to do a little bit more of now. You can email it to me at martin@cityheadshots.com. That's CITY, headshots with an S. And again, as a thanks, I'll give you free access to the course. Of course, if for any reason you have not found the show enjoyable or don't like these episodes, feel free to email me about that too. I'd love to know how I can improve it. Reviews really do help the show grow, and the more that we get, the more easily other actors will be able to find it as well. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.